The enemies and bosses of Silent Hill 2 Remake have many underlying meanings to them, with some of them not even being obvious to the naked eye. Oh, James, you silly perv. Let alone on a first-time playthrough. But as somebody obsessed with the Silent Hill franchise myself, I've taken it upon myself to once again return to Silent Hill and figure out which enemies in Silent Hill 2 Remake are most likely to make you shit your pants. Bloober Team has essentially achieved the impossible with Silent Hill 2 Remake by taking a beloved survival horror classic, regarded by many as one of the founding fathers of the genre, and reimagining it in such a way that not only respects the original and its creators, but it builds upon it and expands the world of Silent Hill, while still making it feel new and familiar for veteran players. The original Silent Hill 2 is a story about a guy who gets lost in his own story, and the enemies he faces, as well as the world around him, all tells a very unique and horrific story about someone's subconscious and what that actually looks like once they take the mask off. Bloober Team took up the legacy left behind by Team Silent nearly 20 years ago and slayed the largest beast in gaming, the public's perception of them. So today, I'm going to ask the question, what are the scariest enemies in Silent Hill 2 Remake? And how scary are they? I'm going to rank them off fear, difficulty, and art direction, and give you my reasons why. I really hope you guys aren't afraid of heights, and you don't get lost in the fog. Who's going to claim the top spot? Let's find out. Number 10. Creepers. If you thought an entire house filled with cockroaches was bad, then just wait until you encounter an entire town filled with them. Sucks to suck, James. These cockroach-like monsters originally showed up in Silent Hill PS1 as a manifestation of Alyssa Gillespie's obsession and dislike for insects, and considering that she harnessed psychic powers, it amplified their existence throughout the entirety of the town of Silent Hill and its other world. After Harry Mason finally dealt with the horrors of the first game, the creepers once again showed up in Silent Hill 2, but this time, seemingly derived from the power of the town itself, which is symbolized by the 9 red squares. Before the double Pyramid Head boss fight, you got Pyramid Head, lying figures, mannequins, bubblehead nurses, mandarins, flesh lips, abstract daddy, Maria, and Mary herself. All creatures from James's subconscious that materialize into physical forms, with the creepers not being a part of James's delusions, but rather from the town itself, with many theorizing that the creepers materialize because of the lingering residue from the events of the first game. And it's even stated by Masahiro Ito, the game's lead monster designer, that they were placed in the game as a way to pay homage to the first Silent Hill game. I mean, you gotta find a way to bridge that gap somehow, am I right? Gameplay-wise, these enemies are at the bottom of the list, because quite frankly they just aren't that scary. These enemies can be killed by one hit of your melee weapon, with the game's auto-aim making quick work of these filthy roaches. Well, that is if the game decides to lock on properly. Beyond basic combat though, the most scariest aspect of their presence in game actually doesn't come from the bugs themselves, but rather from the static that radiates from James's radio, letting him know that danger's near, and that he should keep his guard up. But as soon as you realize that the static that's coming from James's radio isn't from some otherworldly abomination of James's subconscious, but rather from some large cockroach, then let's just say that the creeper that resides within Silent Hill becomes a whole lot less, well, creepy. Number 9. Lying Figure. James Sunderland probably should have walked his ass home after he stumbled upon a large trail of what could only be perceived as blood within Silent Hill. At least that's what any sane person would have done, especially after what happened just 5 minutes earlier. Oh my god, it's sucking its own dick. Oh yeah, it's sucking its own dick. But unfortunately for James, he's not only a man of determination, but he's also a man that can't resist a hot piece of ass walking in the distance. Is that like Mary? No, James, it's not Mary, it's a lying figure. A creature created by James's subconscious that can't wait to ambush James and hop to a acid all over his face. I mean, I like to potty, but god damn. It's my understanding that the upper torso of this creature is covered in a body bag straitjacket as a way to reference one of two things. One being a corpse, with the lying figure's movements resembling that of a sick hospital patient, squirming in agony. And two, as a reference to James's sick wife, Mary, symbolizing Mary's death, her confinement to her deathbed, and James's feeling of confinement to Mary in the hospital that she was being treated at. The lying figures are scary because of the implication of what's underneath their body bag straitjackets, and in my opinion, would most likely look like dead and decrepit bodies, somewhat resembling a leper, that was ripped straight out of a BDSM nightmare fever dream. Now that's fucked up. Number 8. Mannequins. When James Sunderland eventually makes his way through Woodside Apartments and ends up at room 202, he stumbles upon a mannequin, one wearing similar clothes to Mary, James's dead wife, and is also carrying a fully charged flashlight, which James can now use to help find his way through the darkest corners of Silent Hill. But right after James takes that flashlight for himself, he's met face to face with another sex fantasy abomination of James's subconscious, this time resembling headless, armless dummies that only have a bottom half. Well, technically there's 2 bottom halves, and are often hidden out of sight, or in other cases, are just flat out hidden in plain sight. But as soon as James makes their presence known, they'll spring into action. It's my understanding that the mannequins represent James's urges and impulses as a man, if you know what I mean, and appear headless, lacking a fully human appearance, because of James's unwillingness to remember who these mannequins represent, and ultimately, what he did to his late wife. On all 4 legs, the mannequins wear leg braces to symbolize the equipment that Mary needed to use to help her walk while she was sick with her illness. Well, at least James didn't have a leg fetish. At least, I don't think so, right? But once James eventually makes his way to room 201 in Woodside Apartments, he'll witness Pyramid Head seemingly having his way with not 1, but 2 mannequins. And although this might seem erotic, its purpose was actually to help remind James of what happened to Mary, and less so about anything related to lust. The mannequins themselves are born from lust, but this encounter itself, not so much. By far, the scariest aspect of the mannequins is that once James reaches Toluca Prison, that the mannequins will transform into spider variants of themselves for the remainder of the game, making them even more dangerous and deadly in the process. And they already had some of the most aggressive attacks in the game, with the humongous lunge. But when you take all of that into account, and add the fact that they can climb on walls and dive towards James, it makes them terrifying, and especially in dark corridors. And don't even get me started on the fact that they don't always enable the radio static, helping these creepy fucks ambush James. Now that's some bullshit. Number 7. Bubblehead Nurses. After following Laura from the Revere Theater to Brookhaven Hospital, and separating himself from a seemingly sick Maria, James is met once again with another horror of his subconscious, the OnlyFans nurses. My bad, I meant the Bubblehead nurses. One of the most interesting aspects of the nurses' appearance, though, is that they're roughly the same height Mary was while she was alive. But unlike James's sick wife, the Bubblehead nurses can be seen wearing low-cut, Brookhaven Hospital uniforms as a way to symbolize James' desire for Mary and sexual gratification. I mean, seriously, James, just buy an OnlyFans already. The actual Bubblehead of the nurses are wrapped in a thin, vinyl-like mask, containing a liquid that's mixed with thin blood, and gives a swollen-like appearance to the surface of their heads. And believe it or not, it's not because James hit them one too many times in the head with a pipe, but in fact, is reminiscent of Mary's swollen head, while she was sick and hospitalized with her illness. Also, if we take a closer look, you can see a small red square in the place of where the nurses' mouths would be, which in my opinion, resembles the safe squares that James encounters during the game, and works almost as a baby's pacifier, with many thinking that this is because James and Mary had desired to become parents one day. Combat-wise, the nurses come in 2 variants. You have the clean and clearly gifted nurses, who walk around and attack James with a pipe. And then you have the otherworld nurses, who look like they're covered in rotten oil and attack James with a knife. And these ladies are aggressive as shit, so be sure to beat the fuck out of them bitches. Lastly, every once in a while mid-fight, you'll see the nurses stop in their tracks and start shaking violently. This, many people believe, is the nurses suffocating themselves and is a way for James's subconscious to taunt James for suffocating Mary with a pillow. Yeah, that's what I call some internal resentment. Number 6. Mandarin. After James finally makes his way through Brookhaven Hospital, he continues his pursuit of Laura through South Vale's Otherworld, eventually leading to his very first encounter with the Mandarins underneath some storm drains on Saul Street. From dodging tentacles that protrude from their orifices, to not being able to see jack shit while fighting them. the Mandarins will always give James a run for his money. Appearance-wise, the Mandarins have long, suction-like arms that have human mouths at the end of them. And in fact, every single orifice on the Mandarin's body is a human mouth, with some thinking that this is to symbolize Mary's inner turmoil and anger during her illness. It's my understanding that Mary would treat James poorly and often get mad or yell at him at times, and perhaps undeservingly. But considering the severe anguish and suffering that Mary went through, can you really blame her? Also, it's kind of a double entendre of sorts. And in my opinion, you know what they say about lips. Women have 2 sets of them, and James can get a little sus at times. Combat-wise, the Mandarins are mainly fought under floor grates, as a way to symbolize James' desire to escape his life with Mary, explaining why for majority of the game, they're trapped underground. But once James eventually makes his way to the Lakeview Hotel, all of that changes. He'll get to fight one face-to-face, in the conference room on the 3rd floor, making for one of the most unique and intense boss fights in the game, and on a first-time playthrough, was an epic surprise. Also, after making your way into the basement of Lakeview Hotel, the Mandarins will double as a stalker enemy that cannot be killed, considering that James was stripped of all of his weapons and all of his inventory in order to ride the elevator down into the basement, and in the process made the Mandarins an even bigger pain in James's ass. I mean, thank God their AI is shit in these sections, and their greatest nemesis is a door and some walls, or else we'd be screwed. And I'm just saying, it's not like one just broke down a wall like 30 minutes ago or anything. Yeah, them boys retarded. Number 5. Flesh Lips. When James Sunderland finally catches up to Laura inside of Brookhaven Hospital, he's tempted with a potential letter from his late wife, one that Laura promises to give James if he follows her to where she left it. But after Laura finally leads James to where the letter is supposedly at, he's met with Laura shutting the door behind him and locking him inside with flesh lips. That's right, James is so dumb that even a child could fool him. And in my opinion, this showcases how desperate James is to find Mary, that he'll allow a child to back him into a corner as he fights for his life against yet another abomination of James's subconscious. It's my understanding that Flesh Lips is the representation of James's memory of Mary while she was on her deathbed, with the monster's flesh being very similar to Mary's broken skin that she suffered during her disease, and the metal frame of the monster supposedly resembling Mary's bed itself. As the name implies, Flesh Lips does in fact have a set of lips, but its location on the monster is somewhere quite unique. Its crotch. I wonder why that is. Also, quite interestingly, no enemies within Silent Hill 2 is seen with the mouth motive until after Flesh Lips' appearance in-game, and as I've stated earlier in the video, represents Mary's verbal abuse towards James while she was sick. Combat-wise, this fight's scary because of Flesh Lips' ability to hide in the ceiling and drop down whenever and wherever it wants, ambushing James in the blink of an eye. And unlike the original, which showcased 3 Flesh Lips during this boss fight, the remake only has James fighting 1, but this time, it's capable of transforming itself by taking its metal frame and using it as legs to attack James, almost giving it a spider-like appearance. Creepy. What I find to be the most interesting aspect of Flesh Lips' appearance, though, is the uncanny resemblance to Mary when James fights her at the end of the game, seemingly implying that James in this moment is actively suppressing his memory of killing Mary in his mind, or else otherwise, James might have been fighting a very different boss in this instance, and most likely one that looked identical to the game's final boss, Mary. Number 4. Eddie Dombrowski. What do you get when you combine depression, tons of carry-out pizza, and a revolver-wielding maniac? Well, that's an Eddie Dombrowski, a self-proclaimed fat piece of shit.
Nothing but a fat, disgusting piece of shit.
It might be one of the most insecure and severely bullied men that James would ever have the pleasure of meeting. Growing up, Eddie was constantly bullied for being overweight, and was essentially laughed at and ridiculed his entire life. Eddie's the type of guy who probably got a ton of wedgies in school, and would often drop to his knees and beg for mercy against the cruel and heartless peers that wanted to break Eddie, eventually leading to Eddie convincing himself that he's lost the genetic lottery, and reinforced this belief by coping with an excessive eating disorder. But although majority of Eddie's shortcomings are a factor of his appearance, he's actually not bothered by the fact that women in particular aren't interested in him. But if you bully him, then well, it's time to die. One bully in particular, who was a jock and football player at Eddie's high school, severely bullied Eddie, and continued even after graduating high school, until one day, Eddie snapped. Eddie was fed up with being treated like a victim, and took revenge on the bully by murdering his dog. Oh, why I oughta. And even shot the bully in the kneecap, before eventually fleeing to Silent Hill, with Eddie even claiming later on in the game that the town called him there. Over time, James began to encounter Eddie throughout Silent Hill, one time at Woodside Apartments, and another at the Revere Theater, eventually leading to their faithful encounter at Toluca Prison, where James finds Eddie yelling at a frozen, dead corpse, claiming that the man had looked at him the wrong way, and after being pressed by James, eventually states that he was just joking, and that he found the corpse that way. Yeah, I doubt that. With many thinking that in this instance, that James was let into Eddie's other world, where he's engulfed in freezing temperatures, and sees dead bodies laying everywhere, as a constant reminder to kill on behalf of the town. Eddie's terrifying because of the implication that he could snap at any moment, and that's exactly what ended up happening, eventually leading to James punching Eddie in the face. Which, by the way, is a nice nod to the OG, and is the start to an epic 3-phase battle between James and Eddie in a meat locker, where James must dip and dodge Eddie's high-powered revolver shots, and use the darkness of the locker, and the frozen meat hanging from the ceiling, to outsmart and outmaneuver his opposition. After James finally defeats Eddie, he'll be able to claim his revolver for himself. Oh wait, they didn't do that? Fuck! Ultimately, Eddie let his paranoia get the best of him, by confusing James's words as insults, and out of fearing for his own life, forced James to take his first human life, or at least what James perceived to be his first human life. Number 3. Mary. James received a letter, claiming that his wife, who died 3 years ago, was alive and waiting for him in their special place, within Silent Hill. A place that James and Mary frequently vacationed, and had many special moments together, before she fell ill with a terminal illness. While vacationing in Silent Hill, Mary and James stayed inside of room 312 of the Lakeview Hotel, and James even recorded a videotape of themselves, one that James forgot that he recorded and left at the hotel, with Mary stating on that very same tape that she would love to return to Silent Hill one day. And boy did she take that serious! Following their vacation, Mary fell ill of an undisclosed terminal illness, and became bedridden, where she was notified that she had tops 3 years left to live, and would have to live out the rest of her days within the hospital. That is some tragic shit, with Mary's disease eventually altering her skin tone and promoted aggressive hair loss that evaporated any traces of physical beauty that Mary once possessed. Well, according to James, of course. This led to a disconnect between Mary and James, with Mary often getting frustrated with James, and regularly taking her frustrations from her situation out on those closest to her, eventually leading to James not visiting Mary while she was hospitalized, and pushed James into developing a drinking problem to help him cope. Ultimately, Mary fell into a deep self-harm depression, often telling James that it would just be easier to be dead. Over time, Mary met an orphan named Laura. The two became great friends, and Laura would console Mary when James wouldn't show up for visits, and led to Mary eventually resenting James. Near the end of her illness, Mary was allowed to return home for a time being, but only because her death was imminent, and she wanted to ensure that she saw James one last time before she died. At their home, James became Mary's primary caretaker. It was an incredibly difficult and time-consuming job, where James considered Mary to be a burden. James sought happiness in his life, and desired the touch of a woman, and with Mary being sick and still in the picture, that just wasn't possible. In the end, Mary did die, but it wasn't from her illness. James decided to suffocate Mary with a pillow, robbing her of the tiny bit of life that she had left, with James forgetting and repressing any memory of this from his mind, and only remembered once James returned to room 312 at the Lakeview Hotel, and rewatched the videotape that James left behind, revealing himself murdering Mary. Along James's journey to find his dead wife, he encounters a woman named Maria, who was a splitting image of Mary while she was healthy, but way sexier, and was created by James's subconscious to fill in those parts of Mary that he considered was lacking, with Maria even possessing many of Mary's memories, and is the town's way to taunt and remind James of what happened to Mary. Not to mention, this isn't the first time Mary has had similarities to another person or monster within Silent Hill, with Mary's final boss form having many similarities to Flesh Lips. It most likely would have been a Mary boss fight if James wasn't actively suppressing that part of his mind. Also, it's a common belief within the Silent Hill 2 community that Mary's body is in the backseat of James's car at the beginning of the game, and is being covered by a blanket, with the remake confirming this theory with the addition of the stillness ending. An ending that showcases James and Mary talking to each other, with Mary's spirit coincidentally in the backseat of James's car. Yeah, I love that shit. Ultimately, what makes Mary so scary is the many different forms that the town makes her take shape, with each and every one's only purpose to bring pain upon James. And quite deservingly, I might add. Mary was a tortured soul, embroiled in pain. She had many mood swings and often claimed that she wanted it all to end, but deep down she loved James and wanted him by her side in her final days, making the game's ending an even more shocking revelation by the time the credits roll, and depending on the ending you choose personally, could differ ever slightly from one another. Is James a violent, murdering psychopath, or is he a kind, compassionate man who mercifully euthanized his wife? I don't know. I guess that's for y'all to decide. But be sure to let me know in the comments section what you guys think about this. Number 2. Abstract Zaddy. Oh my god, I keep doing that. Abstract Daddy, Abstract Daddy! When James Sunderland starts his journey into Silent Hill, he meets a woman named Angela Orozco at Toluca Graveyard. A shy and timid woman who doesn't seem like she's all there, and states to James that she's looking for someone. Her mother. Have you seen my mama? With Angela sharing a similar goal to James in this instance, who also came to Silent Hill looking for someone. His wife. As James travels further into Silent Hill, he'll encounter Angela multiple times, with 2 meetings in particular being significant to Abstract Daddy. You have Blue Creek Apartments, where Angela is seen contemplating self-harm with a knife, before being talked out of it and offering the knife up to James. What the fuck was that? And another time within the labyrinth, where all of Angela's storylines converge into an insane climax that I'm honestly unsure is YouTube friendly. But here we go anyways. Growing up, Angela suffered horrific abuse from her father and brother. And you know, the SA kind. Leaving Angela severely traumatized and broken from her upbringing. Until one day, Angela snapped. It was revealed in a redacted letter that James finds leading into the Abstract Daddy boss fight that Angela had in fact murdered her deranged father, with the very same knife that Angela gave to James inside Blue Creek Apartments, with Abstract Daddy being the representation of pain built up inside of Angela throughout the years, with the monster's appearance taking the shape of 2 figures covered in skin, in an intimate position on a bed frame. Yeah, that's fucked. Oops, wrong terminology. Ultimately, as James went deeper and deeper into Silent Hill, his own nightmare crossed paths with Angela's, and although Abstract Daddy is primarily from Angela's subconscious, it's actually seen through the lens of James, ensuring that the monster is slightly different from the form that Angela sees herself. With the game's lead monster designer, Masahiro Ito, revealing that the iteration that James sees has a bed frame that's influenced from James's memory of Mary while she was bedridden with her illness, with Ito himself even stating that he believes that Angela's version is even more frightening than the one that James and the player witnesses during the game. Abstract Daddy's scary because of the implication that Angela is witnessing something terrifying that the player and James cannot see themselves, as well as the disturbing nature of being abused by a family member. I'm sure that needs no explanation. With majority of James and Angela's encounters during the game typically ending abruptly because of Angela witnessing something behind James, something that James was never able to witness until now. When it was all said and done, James does defeat Angela's trauma for her, with the next and last time James runs into Angela being at the basement of the Lakeview Hotel, where James crosses entirely into Angela's other world, where it's engulfed in flames and has extremely hot temperatures at all times, almost as if she's already in hell. Now that's what I call a fire burning inside of you. Number 1. Pyramid Head. Now, for the most iconic monster in all of the Silent Hill franchise, Red Pyramid Thing. If you know, then you know. This monster isn't just scary, but it literally traumatized me and many others as a child. Oh, 9-year-old me shitting my pants. And it fills my heart with joy, knowing that we'll have many more years of Pyramid Head traumatizing children in the future, just as it should be. It's my understanding that Pyramid Head represents James Sunderland's guilt and desire for pain and punishment, only existing to help James remember his past actions of killing Mary, with certain scenarios in game, having Pyramid Head himself paralleling James and his past actions, such as the multiple murders of Maria. Also, sometime before Mary's illness, when James and Mary vacationed to Silent Hill, they visited the Silent Hill Historical Society, where there's one painting in particular, called Misty Day Remains of Judgment, that showcases a stylistic painting of an executioner, standing among multiple caged corpses, with the executioner resembling Pyramid Head, and could confirm where James got the idea for Pyramid Head in his mind, seemingly confirming that James had this very painting stuck on his mind in order to manifest Pyramid Head, or could be a sign of James's insanity brewing by the time he gets to the Historical Society near the end of the game. But be sure to let me know in the comments section what you guys think about this. Combat-wise, Pyramid Head's not exactly the hardest boss in the world to defeat, especially if you get the dodge down. Shit, I mean compared to the original, them boys were fucking savages. But he is quite aggressive, and particularly when James fights him at the end of the game, where instead of fighting just one with a great knife, which, by the way, why the fuck would Konami and Bloober cut that shit as a usable weapon? To now having to dispose of two of them wielding spears, that have humongous lunges and can be flung at James from long distances. In the end though, what makes Pyramid Head so terrifying isn't the combat encounters, but instead the build-up leading up to those fights, and how masterfully they're crafted, showcasing Pyramid Head as a haunting stalker who relentlessly hunts down James. And ultimately, by the time James finally finishes fighting off both Pyramid Heads, his subconscious finally realizes that they're no longer needed, and is represented by showcasing them offing themselves right before James's very eyes, seemingly fulfilling their purpose. Now thank you guys so much if you stayed the entire time. Silent Hill 2 is a timeless classic, and although in my opinion it didn't need a remake, I am so happy that it got one. My biggest concern was that they were going to take the monster designs and make them either soft or modern versions of what we had before. But Bloober Team treated this game with respect and love. I don't agree with everything that they did with this game, but I will say that this was a damn good fucking remake. Silent Hill 2 Remake is my personal game of the year, and I would love to know in the comments section what you guys think about this. Is it Shadow of the Erdtree? Is it Final Fantasy VII? Let me know everything in the comments section. Now, as always, big thank you to all the Silent Hill wikis out there. This video was made primarily off my knowledge of Silent Hill 2, but I will say that some parts of the video was not possible to make without the help of the wikis, so thank you. Now remember to like, comment, subscribe, do anything you guys can to help me. I am just one guy, and I make these videos because it is my passion. So thank you very much, have a nice day. This has been Drew Spacely. Peace! That boy thick. Sorry, one more thing. I waste a lot of time and energy making this video right here, so please, go check it out. Like right now. Go check it out like right now. Like right now, go check it out. Go check it out like right now.